The first thing Evan Mercer saw when the black doors opened was the man he had been sent to die beside. Adrian Vale stood at the far end of the marble hall, one hand resting on the back of a chair, his expression calm enough to be mistaken for boredom. Around him, armed men watched Evan enter between two escorts from his father's organization. No one called him a hostage. The word they used was peace offering. The metal strapped beneath Evan's shirt made every breath feel borrowed. "Mr. Vale," the older escort announced, releasing Evan's arm as if setting down a package. "Mr. Mercer sends his son as proof of good faith." Adrian's gaze moved over Evan once, slowly, not admiring, assessing. Evan kept his hands visible. That had been the last instruction whispered into his ear before the car doors opened. "Walk straight. Don't touch the vest. Don't speak unless spoken to." The escorts backed away. Evan heard the doors close behind them. They had not come inside with him. Of course they hadn't. Adrian's eyes flicked toward the empty space at Evan's sides. "Your father sent no negotiator?" "Apparently, I'm the negotiation." The answer escaped before Evan could stop it. One of Adrian's men made a quiet sound that might have been a laugh. Adrian did not, but something in his face shifted, barely there. "Lift your arms." Evan's stomach dropped. "I can't." Every gun in the room seemed to rise at once, though only a few actually moved. Adrian remained still. That wasn't a request. Evan swallowed. The device pressed harder against his ribs when he breathed. He could feel the taped edge against his skin, the rough wire near his side, the cold center plate sitting over his sternum. "If I lift them too fast, people could die." Silence hit the room, so completely Evan could hear the soft electronic pulse beneath his shirt. Adrian's hand left the chair. "Clear the hall." Nobody argued, but several men looked at him. One stepped closer. "Boss, now." The room emptied with disciplined speed. Evan's escorts were already gone. Within seconds, only Adrian, two security specialists, and Evan remained beneath the chandelier. Adrian took one measured step forward. "Open the jacket." Evan's fingers would not cooperate. He tried once. Missed the button. Tried again. Slowly, Adrian said. His voice was lower now, not gentler, but controlled. Evan forced his hands to move. The jacket parted. Beneath the white shirt, the shape of the vest was impossible to hide. One of the specialists cursed under his breath. The other raised a scanner, but did not approach. "Pressure trigger," Evan said. "Maybe motion too." They didn't explain everything. Adrian's eyes locked onto his. "Who is they?" Evan almost laughed. "It would have come out wrong. The men who dressed me." "Did you agree to this?" The question struck harder than it should have. Evan had been asked whether he understood, whether he would behave, whether he wanted his younger cousins to survive the coming war. No one had asked whether he agreed. "Does it matter right now?" "It matters to me." That was worse. Evan looked away first. A faint red light blinked beneath the fabric. One of the specialists checked his screen. "There's a live signal. Could be remote. Could be a dead man's circuit." Adrian's attention never left Evan. "Can you stand still?" "I've been standing still my whole life." Again, the words escaped. This time, Adrian's mouth tightened, as if he had heard the meaning beneath them and did not like it. The specialist with the scanner edged closer. Evan felt the pulse under his shirt change. Faster. His breath caught. "Stop." The man froze. The sound changed, Evan said. When he moved, Adrian turned his head slightly. "Back up." The specialist obeyed. The pulse slowed. A small reward. A proof that Evan was not imagining it. Adrian looked at him differently now, not with trust, but with attention. "Good catch." Evan blinked. Praise had never sounded so suspicious. Adrian removed his jacket and placed it carefully on the floor, then took off his watch. "What are you doing?" Evan asked. "Reducing variables." "You're the target." "Yes." "Then get farther away." Adrian stepped closer instead. Evan's fear sharpened into anger. "Are you trying to prove something?" "I'm trying to keep you from panicking. Standing closer to the bomb is a strange strategy. You're looking at the exits. Every 3 seconds. If I leave, you'll assume everyone else has." Evan hated that he was right. Adrian stopped several feet away, close enough to speak without raising his voice, far enough not to crowd him. "My team is going to isolate the signal. No one touches you without warning. You tell us if anything changes." It was a command, but it contained information. More than Evan's own family had given him. And if they can't stop it? Adrian's expression stayed level. "Then we make the next decision with facts." "We?" You're the one wearing it. For one reckless second, Evan almost believed that meant his choice mattered. Then the red light flashed twice. The specialist looked up sharply. Signal spike. Adrian moved without hesitation, placing himself between Evan and the open corridor as the security doors sealed. Not touching him, not abandoning him, shielding people outside from the blast, Evan realized, and staying inside with him. Why? Evan whispered. Adrian glanced back. Because I don't kill people before I know what they chose. The specialist worked in tense silence. Evan counted each pulse because counting was better than praying. When the hum finally stopped, nobody moved for 3 full seconds. Then the scanner operator exhaled. Remote link is blocked. The device is still live, but stable. Stable. Not safe. Evan's knees nearly gave out anyway. Adrian caught his elbow, then released him the instant Evan stiffened. That small withdrawal unsettled Evan more than the touch. Take him to the secure medical room, Adrian ordered. No restraints. One of the specialists hesitated. He could still be part of it. He could. Adrian looked at Evan, his face unreadable again. Which is why he stays where I can find out. Evan stared at the sealed doors, then at the man who had refused to leave him alone with the bomb. He was alive. He was also under Adrian Vale's control. For now, those two facts were the same thing. Evan discovered that surviving the bomb was less painful than being examined like one. The secure medical room had no visible locks, which somehow made the sealed door feel more deliberate. White walls, steel cabinets, one narrow bed under. Lights bright enough to erase every shadow. The vest was still strapped beneath his shirt, its remote signal blocked, but its core mechanism active. 2 technicians worked from behind a portable shield, while a doctor checked Evan's pulse without touching anything near his chest. Adrian stood beside the door, jacketless, sleeves rolled once at the forearms, watching everyone in the room as if they were pieces on a board he refused to leave unattended. His heart rate is elevated, the doctor said. That tends to happen when people attach explosives to you, Evan muttered. The doctor glanced at him, uncertain whether he was joking. Adrian's eyes shifted toward Evan. Can you feel any change in the device? No, Evan paused. Unless humiliation is one of the triggers. A technician hid a smile. The pressure in Evan's chest eased by a fraction. Not safety, just proof he could still make one choice about how this moment belonged to him. The doctor reached for a sedative. Evan saw the syringe and stepped back before he could stop himself. The movement was small. The response was not. One technician raised both hands. Another reached toward the emergency cutoff device. Adrian's voice cut through the room. Nobody moves. Everything stopped. His gaze settled on Evan. Do you want the sedative? The question sounded awkward in his mouth, as if he had learned the words seconds earlier. Evan stared at him. Will it make me unconscious? Yes. Then no. The doctor frowned. Mr. Vale, keeping him calm would lower the risk. He answered. Adrian looked at the syringe. Put it away. The doctor obeyed. Evan did not thank him. The refusal felt rude. It also felt like the first thing that had belonged entirely to him in days. The technicians eventually stabilized the mechanism enough to remove the outer housing, but not the internal trigger fixed against Evan's ribs. They replaced the bulky vest with a smaller restraint frame designed to prevent sudden pressure changes. It was lighter, but the relief came with a cruel reminder. The bomb was no longer visible, yet it was still there. When the medical team finished, Adrian ordered everyone out except the doctor. He needs observation, she said. He gets it. And restraints. Evan's stomach tightened. Adrian did not look at him. No restraints. He may be involved. Then we investigate him. We don't punish him for what we haven't proved. The doctor left without arguing again. The door shut. Evan sat on the edge of the bed, arms folded carefully over his stomach. Adrian remained standing. Am I under arrest? Evan asked. No, can I leave? No. That sounds like arrest with better furniture. Adrian glanced at the bed. The furniture is terrible. Evan looked up despite himself. Adrian's expression had not changed, but the answer was too dry to be accidental. A laugh almost escaped Evan. He swallowed it before it could become something dangerous, like comfort. Adrian crossed to the wall panel and dimmed the lights. You'll be moved when the room is ready. What kind of room? Secure. That isn't an answer. It's the relevant part. There it was again, the command hidden inside certainty. Evan rubbed his thumb against the edge of the blanket. Will the door lock? Adrian paused. Yes. The honesty hurt more than reassurance would have. From which side? Mine. Evan nodded once. His father's men had locked doors from the outside too. They had called it protection then. I want a window. Adrian's brow shifted slightly. Why? Because I'm asking for one. Silence stretched between them. Evan's pulse climbed, not from the device this time. He had asked for something without explaining why he deserved it. Adrian studied him, then tapped the wall panel. The east guest room. Reinforced glass. No balcony access. It was not freedom, but it was a choice that had changed the outcome. Okay, Evan said. Adrian looked as if he expected gratitude and distrusted himself for expecting it. One more thing, Evan added. No one comes in while I'm asleep unless it's medical. Security checks are required. Then wake me first. Adrian's jaw tightened, control pulling against something else. Fine. That night, Evan lay in a wide bed beneath a window overlooking the dark city. The door locked with a soft electronic click. He counted to 10 before checking it anyway. Locked. Of course. On the table beside him waited water, food, and a clean shirt with no family crest. He ate half the sandwich before guilt made him stop. Someone else might need it. The thought arrived automatically. Evan looked at the untouched half, annoyed with himself, and finished it out of spite. A camera sat high in the corner. He stared directly at it. I know you can hear me. The speaker crackled. Adrian's voice answered. Yes. That's unsettling. You asked to be woken before anyone entered. Monitoring is how we do that. Evan hated that the explanation made sense. Do you monitor all your guests? You're not a guest. The answer landed cleanly. Not cruel. Not kind. True. Then what am I? Adrian did not respond immediately. Unresolved, Evan lay back against the pillow. That might be the nicest thing anyone's called me this week. The speaker went quiet. 10 minutes later, the camera light turned off. It was still there, still capable of watching, but Adrian had given him darkness. A small mercy. Evan woke before dawn to voices outside the room. One belonged to Adrian. The other was sharper. Mercer's people deny authorizing the device, the man said. They're claiming the boy acted alone. Evan stopped breathing. Adrian answered. They delivered him restrained between two armed escorts. Which proves transport, not innocence. It proves they're lying about something. The second man lowered his voice, but Evan caught enough. We should hand him over to federal authorities or send him back and force Mercer to explain. Adrian's reply came without hesitation. He goes nowhere. You're protecting an enemy asset. I'm protecting evidence until I know what it is. Evan stared at the window as the first gray light touched the glass. Evidence, not a person. Still, Adrian had refused to send him back. The door opened only after a knock. Adrian entered alone, carrying a tablet. You're awake. Hard not to be when people discuss returning you to the family who put a bomb on you. Adrian's expression sharpened. You heard that. The walls are less secure than the door. He held out the tablet, but did not step closer. Your escorts entered our territory using credentials issued 3 days ago. Your father's office claims those credentials never existed. Evan looked at the image on the screen. A transport authorization code. His eyes caught on the final sequence. He had seen it before, stamped on sealed correspondence his father never allowed him to read. But one character was wrong. Not random. Reversed. This isn't from my father's office, Evan said. Adrian's attention narrowed. You're sure? Evan pointed without touching the screen. Their codes always end by division, then authorization level. This one is backward. Could it be a mistake? Not on documents my father uses to decide who gets to live. Adrian went still. For the first time since the hall, he was not looking at Evan as something to contain. He was looking at him as someone who had changed the shape of the problem, who would know enough to copy the code, but not enough to build it correctly. Evan met his eyes. Someone close enough to steal the format, not close enough to understand it. Adrian lowered the tablet. The locked room had not changed. The bomb was still fixed against Evan's body, but the balance between them had shifted by one small, undeniable degree. Evan was no longer only the living threat. He might also be the first person capable of showing Adrian where it had come from. Adrian studied the reversed authorization code for several seconds, then turned the tablet toward himself. Show me exactly what's wrong. Evan shifted higher against the pillows, careful of the restraint frame beneath his shirt. The last two characters identify clearance level, not division. Whoever copied this swapped them. How do you know? Because my father made me sort sealed correspondence when I was 16. He said an Omega should learn how important men organize their lives. Adrian's expression cooled. Useful lesson. That wasn't the goal. Evan pointed to the code again. Search for documents with the same reversal. Someone who keeps making this mistake probably copied more than one. Adrian tapped the screen and sent the instruction without questioning it. That surprised Evan almost as much as being listened to. An hour later, he was moved, not released, to a secure conference room across the hall. The door still locked from Adrian's side, but it had a window overlooking the river. Evan counted that as a victory and immediately felt foolish for doing so. A small breakfast sat on the table beside several printed transport records. Adrian had replaced his suit jacket, though the sleeves of his shirt remained rolled. You asked for the East Room, he said. This is technically East. Evan looked at the reinforced glass. Do all your concessions come with footnotes? Only the expensive ones. Evan's mouth twitched before he could stop it. Adrian noticed. He was polite enough not to mention it. Instead, he pushed the records closer. 3 other credentials used the same reverse sequence. 2 moved medical equipment through neutral territory. 1 authorized maintenance access to a warehouse I own. Recently, within 6 weeks. Evan scanned the dates. His father's organization tracked everything. Payments, vehicles, people, favors. Nothing moved without leaving a trail, even when everyone pretended otherwise. These aren't random, he said. They're testing whether the copied credentials pass inspection. Adrian leaned one hand against the table. A rehearsal, or several. The word made the hidden mechanism against Evan's ribs feel heavier. Adrian's gaze dropped briefly toward his chest, then returned to his face. Tell me what happened before they brought you here. Evan went still. You already asked. You didn't answer. I answered what I could. Then answer what you can now. It was not gentle, but it was different from the questioning the night before. Adrian had placed the records between them. He was offering context, not demanding blind obedience. Evan looked at the window. They told me I was being sent as part of the ceasefire. I knew my father had discussed offering a family bond. His throat tightened around the phrase. I thought that meant a contract. Maybe an engagement. Something humiliating, not fatal. Adrian's jaw hardened, but he did not interrupt. They took my phone, gave me something to drink. I woke up in a locked room wearing the vest. You saw who put it on you. Masks. Gloves. No names. When did you understand what it was? When they showed me the light and told me not to touch anything. Evan rubbed his thumb along the edge of one page. They said if I caused trouble, my cousins would pay for it. They're 12 and 14. They live in my father's house. Adrian's voice lowered. Did they prove the threat? They didn't need to. Silence settled over the table. Evan expected pity. Adrian gave him something more difficult, attention without softness. You believed them because they had done it before, he said. Not a question. Evan looked down. People disappear when my father needs everyone else to remember the rules. Adrian straightened. That's enough for now. Evan blinked. You're stopping? You're shaking. Evan looked at his hands. They were. He folded them beneath the table. I'm fine. That phrase should be retired. Along with secure room. One battle at a time. The dryness in Adrian's voice pulled a short laugh from Evan, rusty and embarrassing. It ended too quickly, but the tension in his shoulders loosened. Adrian slid the breakfast plate closer without comment. Evan stared at it. I already ate. Half a sandwich 12 hours ago. You monitor food too? I monitor potential explosives in my building. And their sandwiches. The sandwiches are less cooperative. Evan picked up a piece of toast mostly to end the conversation. Adrian returned to the records, granting him the dignity of not watching him eat. It was such a small kindness that Evan distrusted it immediately. 20 minutes later, Adrian's security chief entered after knocking. He was the same man who had argued outside Evan's room. His eyes settled on Evan before moving to Adrian. The warehouse credential was used 4 nights ago. Camera logs were erased, but the system recorded a manual override. Adrian held out a hand for the report. Anything else? The medical shipments were routed through a clinic Mercer's people stopped using last year. Evan frowned. They never stopped using it. Both men looked at him. He set down the toast. Officially, yes. But my father still sends private deliveries there. He calls it the old pharmacy. The security chief's skepticism sharpened. And you know that because? Because I carried inventory lists no one thought I understood. Adrian took the report, read one line, then placed it beside Evan's records. The clinic received components matching part of the signal blocker used on the device. Evan's stomach turned. Then someone built it inside my father's network. Or wanted us to believe they did. The security chief said. Adrian nodded once. Both possibilities stay open. It mattered that he said both. He did not force the facts into the answer he preferred. The chief glanced toward Evan again. We should move him somewhere off-site before whoever arranged this realizes he survived. They already know, Evan said. The words came before fear could stop them. Adrian's attention snapped toward him. Evan reached for the transport record and pointed to a small timing notation beside the copied credential. This marks confirmation of delivery. The escorts had to report completion before the code expired. The security chief leaned closer. Meaning? Evan met Adrian's eyes. Meaning the people who sent me know I reached you. If the building is still standing, they know the bomb failed. No one spoke. The locked room, the armed guards, the reinforced glass. None of it suddenly felt safer. But Adrian was no longer looking at Evan as cargo, evidence, or even merely a threat. He was looking at him like someone whose judgment had changed the next move. Get him access to the copied records, Adrian told the chief. Supervised. The man hesitated. You trust him? Adrian's gaze remained on Evan. I trust what he noticed. It was not personal. It was not freedom. But it was the first piece of trust Evan had earned instead of being ordered to provide. And somewhere beyond the reinforced window, someone had just learned that the peace offering was still alive. Evan expected supervised access to mean a guard breathing over his shoulder while he worked. Instead, Adrian moved the records into a smaller office beside the conference room and stationed one man outside the door. The office had a desk, 2 chairs, a coffee machine that looked expensive enough to require legal counsel, and a window overlooking the same gray river. You can review anything in this folder, Adrian said. Nothing leaves the room. Evan lowered himself carefully into the chair. The smaller restraint frame still pressed against his ribs, but the technicians had confirmed it remained stable. And if I need something outside the folder? Ask. Will you answer? Adrian considered that. Sometimes. Your honesty continues to be deeply reassuring. Adrian set a cup beside him. Coffee. Evan looked into it. Black. You think I drink this? You looked exhausted. That isn't the same as having no standards. Adrian stared at the cup as if it had personally failed him. What do you drink? The question was so ordinary Evan almost missed what it meant. Adrian was asking instead of deciding. Tea. Honey, if you have it. We have honey. Of course you do. Why is that surprising? Evan glanced around the severe office. Nothing in this building suggests anyone enjoys sweetness. Adrian's mouth shifted. Not quite a smile. I'll inform the architect. 10 minutes later, the black coffee was gone, and a cup of tea appeared with a small jar of honey beside it. Adrian did not mention the change. Evan did not thank him. Somehow, that made the gesture feel less like a debt. They worked through the copied credentials until the river turned silver beneath the morning light. Evan marked repeated formatting errors, delivery patterns, and names that appeared where they should not. Adrian asked short questions and accepted short answers. When Evan said he did not know something, Adrian did not push until the answer became whatever he wanted. That alone felt unfamiliar enough to be dangerous. Near noon, Evan reached for another file and winced. Adrian noticed immediately. Pain. Pressure. I'll call the doctor. No, the answer came too fast. Adrian's hand stopped above his phone. Evan forced himself to breathe. Not yet. She'll want to examine the frame again, and I'm tired of being handled. Adrian lowered the phone. What do you want? Evan looked at him. The question had been clumsy, but real. 5 minutes without anyone asking me to prove I'm not about to explode. Adrian stepped away from the desk. 5 minutes. He moved to the window and turned his back, giving Evan privacy without leaving him alone. It was such an imperfect solution that Evan trusted it more than kindness polished smooth. He loosened his shoulders, drank his tea, and watched Adrian's reflection in the glass. The most feared man in the city stood pretending not to monitor him while monitoring him with professional precision. You're terrible at giving people space, Evan said. You're alive. That isn't a denial. It wasn't intended as one. Evan smiled into his cup. The 5 minutes ended when the security chief knocked and entered with a sealed evidence bag. Adrian turned before the man spoke. What changed? We recovered fabric fibers from the warehouse loading bay. Same synthetic weave as the restraint harness. Evan's fingers tightened around the cup. That only proves the vest passed through the warehouse. There's more, the chief said. A maintenance log shows someone disabled the internal cameras for 11 minutes. Adrian took the bag. Name. Credential belongs to a contractor who died 8 months ago. Evan set down the tea. Then it wasn't stolen recently. Both men looked at him. My father's people keep dead credentials active when they want access without creating a living witness, Evan said. The memory came quietly. Envelopes sealed with black wax. Names crossed from payroll, but not from internal lists. Clerks instructed never to ask why. But they usually retire the codes after one use. Adrian's eyes narrowed. Usually? If this one stayed active, someone needed it more than once. The security chief pulled up the digital log. 4 entries in 3 months. Adrian handed the tablet to Evan rather than holding it out of reach. Another small shift. Evan scanned the dates, then the times. 3 entries happened after midnight. The 4th was at 6:12 p.m. during a scheduled charity inspection. This one is different, Evan said. Too public. Adrian leaned beside him, close enough that Evan caught the clean scent of cedar and rain from his shirt. Not overwhelming, just present. Maybe whoever used it needed witnesses. To remember the wrong thing, Evan continued. A legitimate inspection gives everyone a reason to ignore one unfamiliar face. Adrian's shoulder nearly touched his. Evan became aware of the space between them in a way that had nothing to do with danger. He moved the tablet toward Adrian, creating distance without making it obvious. Adrian noticed anyway. He stepped back first. The restraint felt lighter for reasons Evan did not want to examine. Later, when the doctor finally checked the pressure frame, Adrian waited outside after Evan asked him to. Not nearby inside the room. Not visible through the glass. Outside. When Evan emerged, Adrian was standing in the hall with 2 meal options in his hands. The kitchen made soup, he said. They also made something they claim is a sandwich. You don't trust your own kitchen? I trust them with firearms. Evan took the soup. Comforting. They ate in the office while reviewing shipment dates. Adrian worked with one hand and ignored the fact that Evan kept stealing crackers from his plate after finishing his own. On the 4th theft, Adrian slid the entire plate across without looking up. Evan paused. You could just tell me to take them. You already are. That sounded almost human. Don't spread it around. The laugh came easier this time. For a few seconds, the room did not feel secure, monitored, or temporary. It felt almost normal. That frightened Evan more than the locked door had. Normal could become hope. Hope could become something another person controlled. He returned to the records before Adrian could see the thoughts settle over him. Near sunset, Evan found the first real break. The 4 warehouse entries matched 3 medical deliveries and 1 equipment inspection, but the quantities did not. Every shipment listed 1 extra climate-controlled case, each recorded at exactly the same weight. These aren't separate shipments, Evan said. Adrian came around the desk. Explain. Evan aligned the manifests. They moved the same container through different routes. The deliveries were cover. Adrian read the numbers, his expression sharpening. Testing access. Maybe. Evan pointed to the inspection date. But this was the only time the case wasn't returned to the clinic. The room went still. Adrian's security chief, summoned by the finding, checked the destination record. It was transferred to a private storage facility under a shell company. Whose? Adrian asked. The chief looked at the screen. The company was created 2 days before the ceasefire proposal. Evan felt the cold pressure of the frame against his ribs. The bomb had not begun with the men who dressed him. It had been moving through Adrian's territory before anyone offered peace. Adrian looked from the manifest to Evan, and the warmth of the afternoon vanished beneath a new understanding. This wasn't built for the meeting, he said. Evan stared at the identical weights, the reused dead man's credential, and the route hidden inside legitimate deliveries. No, he said. The meeting was built around it. The meeting was built around it. Evan's words settled over the office with more weight than the device still fixed against his ribs. Adrian pulled the manifests closer, aligning the dates with the ceasefire proposal. The container entered my territory first, he said. Then Mercer offered negotiations, which made the final delivery look political instead of operational. Evan traced the route with one finger. No one questions ceremonial cargo the same way they question weapons. Adrian's security chief looked between them. You're saying the peace offer was cover. I'm saying I was the only part everyone was supposed to look at. The realization burned. Evan had spent his life being displayed when his father needed obedience dressed as tradition. This time, the performance had been designed to end in blood. Adrian studied the shell company record. Find the storage facility. Quietly. The chief nodded, then hesitated. If whoever arranged this knows the bomb failed, they may already be clearing it. Then don't give them a reason to move faster. After the man left, Adrian gathered the records into a single stack. You're done for tonight. Evan stared at him. No, Adrian's gaze lifted. That wasn't a request. I noticed. Evan kept his voice level, though his pulse had started climbing. You just learned someone moved bomb components through your territory for weeks. I'm the only person here who recognizes my father's internal habits, and your plan is to send me to bed. My plan is to keep you stable. My body is already being used as an excuse to make decisions without me. The words came out sharper than Evan intended. Adrian went still. Not angry. Measuring. The device is still active. I know. I'm wearing it. Silence stretched between them. Evan expected the familiar pressure to fold, apologize, make himself easier to manage. Instead, he forced his hands to remain open on the desk. Tell me what you found. Let me decide whether I can help. Adrian's jaw tightened. For 1 second, Evan saw the refusal forming. Then Adrian turned the tablet around. The shell company leased a storage unit under a false medical license. My people found thermal shielding, signal relays, and packaging from the same manufacturer as your restraint frame. Evan read the report twice. Any personnel records? One partial image from a traffic camera. Adrian opened a blurred photograph of a man loading the climate-controlled case. His face was hidden, but a dark band circled his wrist. Evan leaned closer. That isn't jewelry. What is it? A household access band. My father issues them to staff who move between private residences. Adrian's eyes narrowed. How many people have one? Dozens. Evan enlarged the image. The band carried a thin silver stripe. But silver is reserved for domestic administration. Schedules. Food. Medical appointments. Family movements. He sat back slowly. Someone close enough to know when I would be alone, when I could be sedated, and when no one would ask questions. Adrian's expression hardened into something cold and precise. So you weren't selected only because you were his son. Evan understood before Adrian finished. I was selected because moving me required the fewest explanations. Saying it aloud should have hurt. Instead, it brought a strange, clean anger. His father had not chosen the most valuable child to prove sincerity. He had chosen the one everyone had been trained not to question losing. Adrian. Close the image. That does not make you expendable. Evan looked at him. It made me convenient. To them, the distinction was small. It mattered anyway. A message arrived on Adrian's phone. He read it, then crossed to the window. The storage facility is empty. Cleared. Professionally. So we're late. Not entirely. Adrian handed him the phone. A photograph showed a metal shipping cradle bolted to the floor. One corner bore a faint black mark shaped like two overlapping squares. Evan recognized it immediately. That's not a manufacturer's stamp. What is it? A routing mark. My father's people use symbols when written destinations are too risky. He looked again. The second square means return transfer. Adrian's attention sharpened. Return where? Evan searched his memory. Old inventory sheets. Packages moved through the kitchen entrance. Servants speaking in half sentences when he passed. Not a place. A person. The mark means the container was assigned to travel with someone under household authority. His hand moved unconsciously toward his chest and stopped before touching the frame. Me. The bomb had not merely been delivered to Adrian. Its route had been hidden inside Evan's own movements from the beginning. Adrian took the phone back. Then the people behind this needed you alive long enough to cross every checkpoint. And dead before I could explain any of it. The room felt colder. Adrian moved toward the door. I'm doubling security. Evan stood carefully. I'm coming with you. No, we just did this. The device is stable, and the doctor cleared me to walk. You need someone who can read those routing marks. Adrian looked at him for a long moment. Evan did not look away. Finally, Adrian opened the door. You stay beside me. You follow instructions if the device changes. It was still control, but it was also admission. Evan had made a choice, and Adrian had altered the plan because of it. Agreed, Evan said. They moved to the operations room together. Conversation stopped when Evan entered, but Adrian did not place him behind a guard or at the far wall. He cleared a space beside the central table and gave Evan access to the recovered images. The gesture was practical, public, costly. One by one, Evan identified the symbols, separating false delivery trails from probable movement records. Each answer narrowed the search and widened the danger. Whoever had built the plan knew Mercer's household, Adrian's checkpoints, and the timing of the ceasefire. This was not an attack from one side against another. It was an attempt to force both sides into responding exactly as expected. Adrian leaned close enough to speak without the room hearing. If this becomes too much, say so. Evan glanced at him. Would you listen? I'm trying to develop the habit. Despite everything, Evan almost smiled. Then a technician placed another image on the screen. The shipping cradle, photographed weeks earlier beneath a manifest bearing Evan's personal household designation. Adrian's expression changed. Not surprise. Fear, tightly controlled and quickly buried. Evan saw it anyway. For the first time, Adrian was not only protecting evidence or managing a threat. He was afraid of losing him. The knowledge warmed something Evan did not trust. Around them, the investigation accelerated. Orders moved. Routes closed. The room bent around Adrian's authority, but Adrian's attention kept returning to Evan, as if confirming he was still there. Evan understood the new danger with painful clarity. He was no longer merely the peace offering who had survived. He was now a living witness, a key to the plan, and a liability to everyone who needed the truth buried. And Adrian Vale had just made it clear, in front of his entire organization, that Evan mattered enough to protect. By midnight, Adrian had turned the entire building into a fortress, and Evan had become the only person inside it who had not been told the plan. Security doubled at every entrance. The operations room emptied in controlled waves as routes were sealed and teams reassigned. Evan remained beside the central table until a guard approached him with careful politeness. Mr. Vale wants you upstairs. Evan looked across the room. Adrian was speaking with his security chief, one hand braced against the table, his attention fixed on a map Evan could no longer see. Did he say why? No, of course he hadn't. Evan crossed the room before the guard could stop him. Adrian noticed immediately. You should be resting. You should be answering. The security chief stepped away, but Adrian dismissed him with a glance. When they were alone, Evan pointed toward the darkened screens. What changed? We received a credible threat against this location. From whom? Unconfirmed. What kind of threat? Adrian's expression closed. The kind that requires you to move. Where? A more secure floor. Evan stared at him. You mean the windowless rooms below the medical wing? Adrian did not deny it. The pressure frame beneath Evan's shirt suddenly felt less like the only thing holding him together and more like another lock. No, this isn't optional. Then stop pretending it's protection. Adrian's jaw tightened. Someone knows you survived. Someone knows you can identify their routes. I'm not leaving you exposed because you dislike the room. I dislike being moved without information. You have the information you need. No, I have the information you decided I'm allowed to have. The words landed harder than Evan expected. Several people nearby stopped pretending not to listen. Adrian lowered his voice. Upstairs. Now. Evan felt the old instinct rise. To apologize, obey, become easier before someone else paid for his resistance. He hated how familiar it felt. You asked me to help, he said. You put me beside you in front of everyone because my judgment mattered. Does it only matter when I agree with you? Something shifted in Adrian's face. Not enough. This is about survival. Mine. Yes. Then I should be part of the decision. Not when the wrong decision gets you killed. Adrian turned toward the guard. Take him upstairs. Evan stepped back before the man could reach him. Don't touch me. The guard froze and looked to Adrian. For 1 second, nobody moved. Then Adrian said, Leave us. The room cleared around them, though the doors remained open. Adrian waited until the last guard was out of earshot. You think I'm doing this because I enjoy controlling you? I think you don't know the difference anymore. Adrian's voice dropped. I know exactly what happens when I let one variable out of my control. I'm not a variable. Right now, you are the center of the threat. That's what my father called me when he needed my obedience. A risk, a responsibility, something everyone else had to manage. Adrian went still. Evan saw the comparison hurt him. He also saw it fail to change the decision. I'm not your father, Adrian said. Then don't make his choices with better reasons. A sharp tone sounded from the table. Adrian checked the incoming report and turned the screen away before Evan could read it. That movement decided everything. What does it say? Evan asked. Nothing you need to act on. There it is. Evan, no. You don't get to tell me I'm essential, then hide the moment the information becomes dangerous. Adrian placed the tablet face down. A vehicle connected to one of the copied credentials was seen near the East Access Road. My people are handling it. Evan's mind moved faster than his fear. East Access. The same side as the room you gave me. Adrian's silence confirmed it. They know where I am. They may know the floor. And you were going to move me through the internal elevator without telling me why. Because if the route is compromised, fewer people knowing reduces the risk. Unless someone inside already knows. Adrian's eyes hardened. That is exactly why you are being isolated. With guards you chose and a route I didn't. Evan shook his head. You're not reducing uncertainty. You're removing me from the decision so you don't have to feel it. The accusation hit. Adrian's control slipped only enough for his hand to tighten around the edge of the table. I will not gamble with your life. It's already my life. Silence filled the room. For one brief moment, Adrian looked as though he might listen. Then another alert flashed. He made the decision Evan had feared. You're going downstairs. The medical team will stay with you. You'll have no external access until the threat is contained. You're cutting me off. Temporarily. From the records? Adrian did not answer. Evan understood. Access revoked. Information removed. Choice erased. The guard returned when Adrian called. This time, Evan did not resist being escorted. Resistance would only prove Adrian's argument in front of everyone watching. He walked through the secured corridor with his hands loose at his sides, carrying his anger carefully so no one could mistake it for panic. The lower room had no window. A bed stood against one wall, a monitor against another, and a camera watched from the corner. On the small table sat a fresh pot of tea and the same jar of honey from the office. The gesture should have been kind. Instead, it made the room worse. Adrian had remembered what Evan liked while forgetting to ask what he wanted. The guard remained outside as promised. The door locked. Evan stood in the center of the room, listening to the electronic click fade. Minutes later, the wall speaker came alive. The East Road vehicle was abandoned, Adrian said. No explosives. No driver. Evan looked at the camera. Then it was meant to make you move me. A pause. Possibly. Did the route downstairs appear anywhere in the copied access files? Adrian did not answer quickly enough. Evan closed his eyes. You don't know. We're checking. And now I'm exactly where they wanted me moved. The speaker went silent. For the first time, Adrian's control had not merely confined Evan. It had changed the board for the enemy. Evan sat on the edge of the bed, the untouched tea cooling beside him. He was no longer willing to call a locked door safety just because the man on the other side cared whether he survived. And upstairs, Adrian Vale was about to learn that protecting Evan without trusting him had created the very vulnerability he had been trying to prevent. The silence after Adrian's last words lasted long enough for Evan to understand that, upstairs, something had gone wrong. Not the kind of wrong that set off alarms. The kind that made powerful men stop speaking because every available choice exposed a weakness. Evan sat on the edge of the narrow bed and looked at the untouched tea. Honey floated in a thin golden line across the surface. Adrian had remembered the preference and ignored the person. That was the problem in its cleanest form. The speaker clicked on. The lower corridor has been compromised, Adrian said. His voice was controlled, but the control sounded thinner now. A maintenance lock cycled without authorization. Evan stood. You moved me into their route. Yes. No excuse. No argument. Just the truth. It hurt more than denial would have. Open the door. Security is clearing the corridor. Open it. Not yet. Evan closed his eyes. Even now, Adrian was still trying to choose the correct moment to return what he had taken. You don't understand, Evan said. I do. No. You understand that the plan failed. You don't understand what you did. The speaker remained quiet. Evan faced the camera. My father always had reasons too. Every locked room was for stability. Every order was for the family. Every time I lost a choice, someone explained that it was necessary. His voice shook once, then steadied. You gave me tea and called the cage safer. That doesn't make it less of a cage. The lock disengaged with a soft click. Evan stared at the door. It opened slowly, revealing Adrian alone in the corridor. No guards at his back. No command waiting in his expression. He held a tablet in one hand and a key card in the other. You're right, Adrian said. Evan had imagined hearing those words. In every version, they brought relief. Instead, he felt tired. About which part? All of it. Adrian stepped inside but stopped near the door. I withheld information. I revoked your access. I moved you after you told me not to. I used the threat to justify making your decision for you. He placed the key card on the table between them. The door is under your control now. Evan looked at the card but did not touch it. And if I leave? Adrian's jaw tightened. I won't stop you. That cost him. Evan could see it in the way his hand remained open at his side, fingers rigid with the effort not to close. Would you follow me? At a distance, unless you tell me not to. That still sounds like surveillance. It is. Adrian did not soften the answer. But you would know, and you would choose. It was not enough to restore trust. It was enough to prove Adrian finally understood what had been broken. Hey! Sharp vibration came from the tablet. Adrian checked it, then handed it to Evan without turning the screen away. The building map showed a service route running beneath the medical wing. The compromised lock sat 2 corridors from the room. Someone used the abandoned vehicle to force a relocation, Adrian said, then triggered an access sequence inside the building. Evan studied the timing. They didn't need to know which room. They needed you to isolate me from the records. That is my assessment. Because they knew I would recognize something. Adrian nodded. Evan scrolled through the copied access logs. His pulse quickened when he saw the sequence attached to the maintenance lock. The reversal was there again, but altered. Not a mistake this time. A deliberate mirror of the code he had identified. They're talking to us, he said. Adrian moved closer, then stopped before entering Evan's space. How? This code was made to look copied. But they corrected the division marker and left the authorization backward. Evan enlarged the sequence. They know I found the first error. This one is meant for me to notice. A location field sat blank beneath it. Beside the field was a household routing symbol Evan had not seen since childhood. A circle crossed by a single vertical line. His stomach turned. What does it mean? Adrian asked. Evan remembered black wax, sealed medicine cabinets, and staff members who vanished from schedules without explanation. Personal retrieval. Retrieval of what? Evan looked down at the frame beneath his shirt. Not what. Who? The temptation came instantly, dressed as responsibility. Leave Adrian's building. Follow the signal alone. Give the people behind this what they wanted before anyone else was hurt. It was the same old logic wearing a braver face. If Evan could absorb enough danger, everyone else might survive. Adrian watched him read the option. What are you thinking? That if they want me, I could end this. The words sounded calm. That frightened him. Adrian's entire body went still. By giving yourself back? By choosing where the risk lands. That is not the same as choosing yourself. Evan looked at him sharply. Adrian did not move closer. I won't order you to stay, he said. But I will tell you what I think. They built this plan around your willingness to protect everyone except yourself. Walking into their hands would not break the plan. It would complete it. Evan wanted to reject the words because Adrian had no right to understand him after what he had done. But truth did not become false because it came from someone who had failed him. Evan looked again at the retrieval mark. Then I don't go alone. Adrian exhaled slowly. No, the word came out as instinct. His expression changed immediately. That was not my decision to make. Evan waited. Adrian corrected himself. What do you propose? It was a small question. It changed the room. Evan picked up the key card and placed it in his pocket. Full access to the records. No withheld routes. No moving me without telling me first. Agreed. If the device changes, I decide whether I can continue after the medical team gives me the facts. Adrian's fear surfaced, sharp and unmistakable. He let it exist without turning it into authority. Agreed. And if I say stop, we stop. Yes. Evan studied him. You don't get trust back because you finally asked. I know. You may not get it back at all. Adrian's gaze held his. I know that too. Another vibration sounded from the tablet. The blank location field had populated with a time and a route leading toward the old clinic. Not an ambush revealed, not yet. An invitation built from everything they had learned. Evan felt fear move through him, but it no longer felt like an order. He handed the tablet back. "We do this together," he said. "Not with me behind you. Not with you deciding what I can survive." Adrian accepted the tablet without touching Evan's hand. "Beside me," he said. The door remained open behind them. Evan noticed that before he stepped into the corridor, he was still angry, still hurt, still unsure whether Adrian could become the man his promises required. But for the first time since arriving with a bomb strapped to his body, Evan walked toward danger with the terms in his own voice, and Adrian Vale followed them. Evan entered the old clinic through the front door because that was the route he had chosen. Adrian walked beside him, not ahead. His people held the surrounding blocks, but none of them crossed the threshold without Evan's approval. The clinic smelled of dust, disinfectant, and rain leaking through old brick. Half the lights were dead. The remaining bulbs hummed over an empty reception desk and a hallway Evan remembered from childhood, when Mercer staff had brought injured men here without names. Adrian checked the dark corridor. The retrieval signal is active. Evan looked at the tablet in his hand. The household symbol pulsed beside a countdown linked to the device under his shirt. 12 minutes. "It wants me downstairs. We can pull back." Adrian said it without reaching for him. Evan heard the fear beneath the restraint. "Not yet." He opened the access logs they had copied. The code isn't only a route. It's an instruction chain. Household staff used these markers to move people without explaining why. Adrian's eye stayed on him. "Can you change it?" "Maybe. That isn't enough for me. It has to be enough for me." The old Adrian would have ended the argument there. This one looked toward the basement door, then back at Evan. "Tell me the risk. If I enter the retrieval sequence wrong, whoever controls the signal may trigger the device. And if you do nothing?" Evan watched another second disappear. "They trigger it when the timer ends." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Your decision." The words cost him. Evan felt that cost and refused to turn it into gratitude. He moved down the hallway. At the basement landing, a speaker crackled overhead. "Evan." He knew the voice. Mr. Rook had managed his father's private household for 14 years. He had scheduled meals, medical visits, punishments, and disappearances with the same careful handwriting. "You were always better with codes than your father believed," Rook said. Evan stopped beside the locked basement door. "You put the bomb on me. I arranged a necessary correction." Adrian's hand shifted near his weapon. Evan glanced at him once. Adrian waited. "A correction to what?" Evan asked. "Two organizations preparing to make peace without understanding the cost." Your father had grown weak. Vale had grown ambitious. A clean attack would have united them against a common enemy. Your death inside his home would have done the opposite. The answer was not madness. That made it worse. Rook had built the plan from everyone's predictable cruelty. Mercer would sacrifice an Omega son. Adrian would kill an apparent threat, and both sides would choose war before asking who benefited. "You expected him to shoot me," Evan said. "I expected him to act like the man he claims to be." Adrian's expression did not change. Evan understood the trap. Rook still wanted a reaction. And when he didn't, then you became evidence that needed retrieval. The basement lock clicked open. Beyond it waited a single chair beneath a hanging light and a control unit mounted on the wall. No Rook, no visible gunman. Just the machine and a camera pointed at the chair. The tablet displayed a new instruction. "Enter alone." Adrian read it over Evan's shoulder. "No," the word came fast. He stopped himself. "What do you want to do?" Evan looked at the chair. The old instinct offered an easy answer. "Walk in. Sit down. Let Adrian's people escape. End the danger by becoming useful one final time." He could almost hear his father calling it noble. Evan closed the instruction screen. "I'm not sitting there." The countdown dropped below 8 minutes. Rook's voice sharpened. "Then everyone in the building dies with you." "No," Evan said. "That was always the lie, wasn't it? That the only way to save people was to let you decide what happened to me." He opened the copied routing files and found the mirrored authorization sequence. It was not a command to the bomb. It was a confirmation request from the household system. Rook needed Evan inside the room because the biometric reader on the chair would verify personal retrieval and transfer control to the basement unit. "The chair is the handoff," Evan said. "If I sit, the device transfers from remote control to local." Adrian followed the logic, which lets him erase the external signal trail. and destroy the clinic with the evidence inside. Evan selected the household authority field. His access had once been the lowest level in the system, useful enough to carry records, never important enough to question them. But Rook had tied the retrieval order to Evan's personal designation. That meant the system would accept his response. I can reject the transfer. What happens then? Adrian asked. The signal remains remote, and your team can trace it. Can Rook trigger the bomb first? Yes. Adrian's face went still. Every instinct in him demanded control. Evan watched him choose against it. He opened the communications channel to his security team and placed the transmitter in Evan's hand. Your call. Evan's thumb hovered over reject. He was afraid. Not peacefully, not beautifully. His knees felt weak, and the frame beneath his shirt seemed to tighten with every breath. Courage did not make his life feel disposable. It made him want to keep it. Trace the return signal, he told Adrian's team. Then he pressed the command. The clinic lights died. The device against his ribs emitted one long tone. Adrian moved toward him and stopped before touching. Evan, wait. 3 seconds passed. Then the tablet filled with a live route, bouncing from the clinic to a private relay inside Mercer territory. Adrian's team responded immediately. The signal location locked onto a household communications office registered under Rook's authority. Evidence files began downloading before he could wipe them. Access orders, medical shipments, the ceasefire schedule, and authorization showing Evan had been selected because his movements attracted the least scrutiny. Rook's voice broke through the speaker. You think Vale will let you remain free after this? Evan looked at Adrian. I think that's his choice to prove. Adrian held his gaze. No, it's yours. The tone beneath Evan's shirt stopped. A technician's voice came through the transmitter. Remote control severed. Device is inert. Evan's legs finally gave. Adrian caught him, but only after Evan reached for him first. Outside, Vale's teams moved on the traced relay while Mercer records streamed into secure storage. Rook's plan had failed not because Adrian had controlled every variable, and not because Evan had offered himself up one last time. It failed because Evan had refused the role written for him, and Adrian had trusted him enough to let that refusal become the plan. When they stepped out of the clinic, the rain had stopped. The bomb was dead. The truth was no longer buried. And for the first time, nothing external required Evan to remain at Adrian Vale's side. Outside the clinic, Adrian released Evan the moment he could stand without help. He did not ask where Evan wanted to go. He did not order a car brought around. He simply remained beside him while the rainwater ran toward the curb and Vale's people secured the evidence that had ended Rook's plan. A medical team removed the dead device before sunrise. Evan lay beneath bright lights again, but this time every hand waited for his permission. When the last piece of metal lifted from his ribs, he expected relief to feel larger. Instead, it came quietly, a full breath with nothing pressing back. Adrian waited outside the room. Evan knew because the doctor asked whether she should let him in. Not yet, Evan said. The answer carried no apology. Tell him I need 10 minutes. Of course. No one argued. 10 minutes later, Evan opened the door himself. Adrian stood across the hall with a clean shirt folded over one arm and 2 cups in his hands. Tea, he said. I checked first. Evan accepted the cup. Progress. Painfully slow progress. The worst kind. Adrian's mouth almost curved. He handed over the shirt, but made no move to help Evan change. That restraint mattered more than any promise could have. By noon, the evidence from Rook's relay had been duplicated, secured, and placed beyond the control of either organization. The records showed everything. The stolen credentials, the staged deliveries, the plan to turn Evan's death into an act of war, and the household authorization Rook had used because Mercer leadership considered Evan's movements too unimportant to monitor closely. Evan's father had not designed the bomb, but he had approved sending his son as a political offering without asking enough questions to care whether Evan returned alive. Rook had depended on that indifference. Adrian did not soften the truth when he explained it. He also did not decide what Evan should do with it. Your father's representatives are requesting contact, Adrian said in the east guest room. The window showed the city washed clean after the storm. The door stood open behind him. You can speak to them, refuse them, or have counsel respond. The records are yours to use. Evan looked at the tablet Adrian had placed on the table rather than in his hands. And if they demand I return? They can demand whatever they like. What will you do? Adrian's fingers tightened once at his side. What do you want me to do? The question settled between them. Weeks ago, Adrian would have answered with guards, routes, and certainty. Now he waited. Evan looked toward the open doorway. I don't want to go back. Then you won't. That sounded like an order. Adrian exhaled. Then let me try again. You have the right to refuse them. If you choose to stay here while you decide what comes next, you may. If you choose somewhere else, I'll arrange protection only if you ask for it. Evan studied him. And if I ask for no protection? Fear crossed Adrian's face, brief and honest. I'll hate it. He paused. And respect it. That was the answer Evan had needed. Not because it promised safety, but because it left the choice intact. He picked up the tablet and declined the request from his father's office himself. No explanation. No apology. Just a decision. Afterward, Adrian showed him the documents that dissolved every claim Mercer's organization could make over his movements, finances, or future. Evan signed his own name at the bottom. The act took less than a minute. It felt like crossing a country. 3 days later, he moved out of the secured medical floor. Adrian offered several locations, including one beyond Vale territory. Evan chose a small apartment in a quiet building overlooking the river. It had reinforced windows because Evan requested them, an ordinary lock he controlled, and no camera in the corner. Adrian stood in the doorway after carrying in the last box. Anything else? Evan looked around the kitchen. Tea. There are 6 kinds in the cabinet. You stocked my kitchen? Adrian's expression remained solemn. I was advised that empty cabinets create a poor first impression. Evan opened the cupboard. 6 boxes of tea sat beside a jar of honey and 4 packages of the crackers he used to steal from Adrian's plate. He glanced back. This is subtle. I was also advised subtlety was no longer credible. Evan laughed, and this time he did not stop himself. Adrian watched him with an expression Evan could finally read. Not possession, not relief disguised as authority. Hope held carefully enough to survive refusal. The apartment is yours, Adrian said. No conditions. You don't owe me work, information, or proximity. Evan leaned against the counter. And what do you want? Adrian was quiet for a moment. To stand beside you. If you choose that. No grand declaration. No claim. Just the truth stripped of power. Evan crossed the kitchen slowly. Adrian did not move until Evan reached for his hand. I'm not staying because you saved me, Evan said. I know. And I'm not promising never to leave. The words hurt Adrian. He let them remain true. I know. Evan laced their fingers together. I'm choosing to be here today. Adrian's thumb moved once across his knuckles. Then today is enough. The following morning, Adrian arrived with breakfast and knocked even though he had been given a key for emergencies. Evan opened the door wearing socks that did not match and holding a mug of tea sweetened exactly the way he liked it. You're early, he said. You said 8. It's 7:58. That is early in normal person time. Adrian considered this. I can wait in the hall for 2 minutes. Evan stepped aside, smiling. Come in. Adrian crossed the threshold because Evan invited him. The door closed without locking. The man who had arrived as a peace offering no longer belonged to his father, to an organization, or to the man who loved him. Evan belonged to himself. And because the choice was finally his, he reached for Adrian's hand and chose not to let go.